What is justice? It's a question that has haunted humanity for thousands of years. Every society claims to stand for justice. Every government wraps itself in its banners. And yet, injustice thrives. Inequality, oppression, lies disguised as law, all flourish under systems that call themselves just. Plato, one of the greatest minds of ancient Greece, knew this contradiction well. And he dared to say something that governments have feared ever since, that most of them are built not on justice, but on illusions designed to keep the powerful in power. Plato's conception of justice is radically different from what we're used to hearing today. To him, justice isn't merely following laws. It's not about punishing criminals or having courts. It's not even about equality in the modern sense. Justice, for Plato, is a condition of harmony, within the soul and within the state. It is the alignment of parts into a functional, balanced whole. Anything less is not justice. It is disorder wearing a mask. In his most famous work, The Republic, Plato describes justice using the metaphor of a well-ordered city. Just like a city needs farmers, soldiers, and rulers, the human soul has three parts: the appetites, the spirit, and reason. The appetites are our desires, our hunger, our craving for pleasure. The spirit is our will, our courage, our sense of honor. And reason is our capacity to think, to guide, to understand the good. In both city and soul, justice emerges when each part does its own work and does not interfere with the others. When reason rules, spirit supports it, and appetite obeys, the soul is in harmony. That, Plato says, is a just soul. And by extension, a just society is one in which the rulers, those guided by reason, govern wisely. The auxiliaries, those with spirit, defend the state with courage and loyalty. And the producers, those motivated by appetites, supply the material needs of all. None tries to overstep the role of another. Each contributes according to their nature and talent. This is justice, not imposed from outside, but arising from natural order. So why is this idea so threatening to governments? Because it exposes the lie at the heart of many political systems. Plato believed that most states are not ruled by reason, but by desire. And when desire rules, whether in the form of greedy oligarchs, manipulative demagogues, or corrupt institutions, justice dies. These rulers claim to serve the people. They speak of fairness, of democracy, of freedom. But in truth, they serve only themselves. They manipulate public opinion, distort truth, and use fear to control the masses. And worst of all, they make people believe this is justice. Plato calls this a form of soul corruption. When the soul is out of order, when appetite seizes control, a person becomes a slave to desire. The same is true for a city. When the state serves wealth, pleasure, or popular opinion above wisdom and virtue, it becomes unjust, even if it wears the label of democracy. Plato knew this would be hard to hear. That's why he wrote allegories, stories like the allegory of the cave, to illustrate how deeply people are trapped in illusions. In the cave, people are chained from birth, facing a wall. Behind them is a fire, and between the fire and the wall walk others holding objects. The prisoners see only the shadows on the wall and take them for reality. If one prisoner is freed and sees the real world, at first he is blinded. But as his eyes adjust, he understands. He sees the truth. And when he returns to tell the others, they reject him. They mock him. They might even kill him. This is Plato's warning. Those who seek true justice will often be hated by those who live in illusion. Governments that thrive on injustice cannot afford to let people see clearly. That's why truth-tellers are silenced. That's why philosophers are ridiculed. That's why, in many systems, thinking deeply is dangerous. Because the moment people wake up, the structure of power begins to shake. Plato believed that true justice could only be achieved if rulers were philosophers, those who seek wisdom above all else. These rulers, the so-called philosopher kings, would govern not for personal gain, not to satisfy a party, not to serve a class, but to harmonize the soul of the state. They would understand the forms, the ideal realities behind appearances, and especially the form of the good, which Plato describes as the ultimate source of truth and justice. But Plato was not naive. He knew such rulers were rare. Most people are not interested in wisdom. They are interested in comfort, pleasure, security. They want to be told they are free, even if they are not. They want to feel just, even if they live in corruption. And so governments feed them illusions. They give them entertainment, slogans, enemies to hate, and promises to believe in, all while quietly ensuring that the true structure of power remains untouched. This is the brutal truth Plato uncovered, that injustice often masquerades as justice, and the masses often prefer the lie. So what can we do? Are we doomed to live under illusion forever? Plato would say no, but change begins with the soul. Before we fix the state, we must fix ourselves. Before we demand justice outside, we must create harmony within. Are we ruled by reason or by appetite? Do we pursue truth, or are we content with shadows on the wall? Do we seek wisdom or popularity? These are not abstract questions. They are the foundation of real change. Education for Plato is not about filling minds with facts. It is about turning the soul around. It is about leading the prisoner out of the cave. And this is not easy. It requires courage. It requires pain. It requires a willingness to question everything you've ever been told. Most people will not make this journey, but some will. And those who do become beacons of justice in a world that fears the light. Plato's vision of justice is not utopian. It is grounded in human nature. It acknowledges our weaknesses but calls us to overcome them. It does not promise perfection, but it points the way to something better. Imagine a world where rulers governed not by ambition, but by wisdom. Where citizens cultivated their souls as much as their careers. Where justice was not a matter of courts and laws alone, but of the deep inner order of each person. That world may seem distant, but it begins now. It begins with you. In our next part, we will explore how Plato believed unjust systems evolve. From democracy to oligarchy to democracy and finally to tyranny. We will see how each stage corrupts the soul further, and how only a return to truth can restore order. But before we move forward, ask yourself, are you still in the cave? Are you ready to see the light? And are you willing to pay the price that truth demands? Because once you see what Plato saw, you cannot unsee it. Justice is not what you've been told. And the greatest threat to injustice is not rebellion, it is philosophy. In Plato's philosophical vision, the collapse of justice in a society is never sudden. It happens in layers, in phases, in subtle exchanges of values. And perhaps the most disturbing truth he reveals is that governments fall in the same way souls fall. The outer world is only a mirror of the inner. When the soul is corrupted, the state follows. This is not just theory. This is a pattern that repeats through history. Plato's idea of justice begins within. For a person to be just, reason must govern the soul, spirit must assist reason, and desire must be kept in check. When this order holds, the soul is in harmony. But when reason loses control, the soul fractures. And when enough people lose this harmony within, governments begin to reflect that disharmony on a massive scale. He lays out 5 types of government: aristocracy, timocracy, oligarchy, democracy, and tyranny. Each one represents a deeper fall from justice. Let's walk through them, not as abstract systems, but as real stages of decay in the human spirit. First comes the aristocracy, the rule of the best. In this ideal state, rulers are philosopher kings, individuals who live for wisdom, truth, and the common good. These are not ordinary people. They've gone through years of education, moral development, and intellectual training. They have overcome the temptations of power and instead serve as guardians of justice. But such a state is rare and fragile. It requires a society where the majority respects reason and discipline. When this support weakens, when people grow weary of the slow work of cultivating wisdom, the aristocracy begins to decay. The first sign is subtle. People start admiring strength and ambition more than wisdom. And so the second regime rises, timocracy, the rule of honor. Timocracy begins when the love of truth is replaced by the love of recognition. The spirited part of the soul, the part that seeks victory and status, takes control. People begin to act not out of principle but out of a desire to appear noble. Public image becomes more important than private virtue. You can see this in a culture obsessed with military power, public ceremonies, and national pride. It praises discipline, but not introspection. It promotes courage, but not reflection. People still honor virtues, but those virtues are hollowed out, worn like medals rather than practiced. In the soul, this person is not evil, but conflicted. They feel the tug of reason but follow the pull of pride. They may still resist base desires, but they're driven by ego, not wisdom. But the problem with pride is that it's never satisfied. Eventually, honor loses its power to inspire. People begin to measure success not by what they stand for, but by what they own. And so the soul and the state sink into the third regime, oligarchy, the rule of the rich. This is the society where wealth becomes the highest good. In the soul, this means the person who once sought honor now chases profit. The disciplined soldier becomes the calculating businessman. The love of virtue gives way to the love of accumulation. And in the state, power belongs to those with money. The poor have no voice, the middle class is squeezed, and the elite protect their status by manipulating laws and systems. Justice is no longer about what is right, it's about what is legal. And legality becomes a tool of the powerful. But oligarchy carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. When a few hold most of the wealth, resentment grows. The poor outnumber the rich, and eventually they demand change. The promises of equality, of fairness, of freedom flood the streets. The rich are cast down and democracy is born. Democracy, the rule of the people. Now this may seem like the solution, but Plato warns, democracy is not the end of the descent. It is the next step toward collapse. Why? Because democracy, in Plato's eyes, is built not on reason or honor, but on unchecked desire. In the democratic soul, all desires are equal. There is no hierarchy. The longing for truth is no better than the craving for cake. The pursuit of virtue holds the same weight as the pursuit of pleasure. And so, people begin to live by impulse. Freedom becomes the only value. Discipline becomes oppression. Anyone who tells you no is your enemy. Authority is viewed with suspicion. Expertise is rejected in favor of opinion. The loudest voices rise, not the wisest. In this chaos, leadership becomes a popularity contest. The person who tells you what you want to hear wins. And when everyone speaks and no one listens, the foundations of order crumble. In the soul, the democratic person is scattered. One day they chase fitness, the next they binge on food. One moment they value philosophy, the next they obsess over pleasure. They are free, yes, but they are also enslaved by their whims. And from this state the final form emerges, tyranny, the rule of a single master, both in the soul and the state. The tyrant rises from the chaos, promising order. He speaks the language of the people, flatters their fears, and offers protection from the uncertainty democracy breeds. But he does not bring justice, he brings domination. In the soul, this is the person ruled entirely by their lowest desires. They have no reason, no shame, no limits. Their appetites rule like a savage king, silencing any voice that dares question them. They no longer seek pleasure for its own sake, but control. Control of others, control of reality, control of truth. And in the state, the tyrant follows the same path. At first he seems like a savior, but then he begins to dismantle institutions, destroy rivals, silence the press, rewrite laws. What was once a republic or a democracy becomes a stage for one man's ego. This is Plato's brutal truth. Tyranny doesn't arrive by invasion. It grows inside us. It starts with small compromises, easy comforts, and misplaced loyalties. And before we know it, the love of justice is replaced by the hunger for control. But Plato does not end the story here. He offers a way back. Because, just as the soul can descend, it can also ascend. It can remember what it once was. It can reclaim reason. And through that reason, it can restore justice, not just in the heart of a single person, but in the structure of an entire society. This requires more than politics. It requires a transformation of values, a return to virtue, a rediscovery of truth. Plato reminds us, justice is not just a system, it is a state of being. It begins with individuals, not institutions. And when enough individuals awaken, the world begins to change. In the next and final part, we'll explore that path of ascent, how to rebuild the just soul in an unjust world. But for now, let Plato's warning settle in. Governments fall when souls fall. And if you want to resist tyranny, the first battle is within. You must protect your reason, strengthen your discipline, choose virtue over comfort. Because when you rule yourself with justice, no tyrant can ever truly rule you. In Plato's mind, the failure of justice in society was not just a political failure. It was a metaphysical tragedy. A soul that is ruled by appetites or ambition cannot be just. A city governed by similar passions becomes a mirror of that same disorder. To understand true justice, we must accept a truth that feels harsh in a world built on illusion. Real justice cannot exist without a radical reordering of the soul, and therefore, the state. This is why Plato insisted that only those who have seen the form of the good, the eternal source of all truth and value, are fit to rule. To modern ears, that might sound elitist, even authoritarian, but Plato wasn't arguing for tyranny. He was warning us. If we allow those who are blind to the good to govern, they will inevitably serve their own desires, not justice. And the people seduced by surface freedoms will cheer them on until the rot collapses the whole structure. Let's return to the cave, that haunting image from the Republic. Inside the cave, people see only shadows projected on the wall. They believe those shadows are reality. Anyone who turns around, who sees the fire, and especially anyone who dares leave the cave to glimpse the world outside, becomes a threat. The prisoner who escapes and sees the sun, who comes to know truth and justice as they really are, returns to the cave not as a savior, but as a dangerous lunatic in the eyes of those still chained. Now imagine this in political terms. The philosopher, the person who seeks wisdom and understands justice, is not welcomed in the halls of power. He or she is often mocked, exiled, or worse. Plato's mentor, Socrates, was executed not because he was wrong, but because he threatened the illusions upon which the city was built. He asked dangerous questions. He demanded truth where others were content with lies. In doing so, he revealed the fragile foundation of a state that preferred comfort to honesty. This is the brutal truth. True justice is a threat to unjust systems. And unjust systems, whether they be governments, institutions, or even personal habits, do not go quietly. They resist. They retaliate. They distort the very meaning of justice to preserve themselves. That's why even today we struggle to define what justice really is. Is it fairness? Is it equality? Is it following the law? Plato would say none of these definitions go deep enough. Justice for him is each part of the soul, and by extension, each part of society, doing its proper work in harmony. It is not a balance of competing interests. It is a reflection of cosmic order. So what does that mean for us? It means we must stop expecting political systems to deliver what only an ordered soul can understand. We must begin with ourselves. If you want to see justice in the world, you must first make your own soul just. That requires painful honesty. It means confronting your desires, your ego, your fears. It means asking, who or what is really ruling me? Is it reason? Or is it the part of me that craves approval, comfort, or control? Plato believed that most people are ruled not by reason, but by appetite or spirit. They want pleasure, or they want victory. And societies tend to reflect this inner hierarchy. The rulers often mirror the dominant passions of the people. That's why democracies can so easily devolve into demagogies, because the people choose leaders who speak to their appetites, not their reason. To protect against this, Plato didn't just call for better leaders, he called for better citizens. Citizens who are educated in philosophy, not just the love of argument, but the love of wisdom. Citizens who can recognize the difference between what is merely legal and what is truly just. Citizens who are willing to suffer for truth rather than prosper in illusion. This, he knew, was a hard path. It's much easier to remain in the cave, to watch the shadows, to applaud the illusions, to blame others for injustice while avoiding the inner work required to live differently. But Plato believed that real justice starts with the few who are willing to turn around, to walk toward the light, and to return to the cave not as conquerors, but as guides, willing to be misunderstood, even hated for the sake of truth. You might be thinking, is this even possible today? In a world where power is bought, where truth is fragmented, where justice seems like a slogan rather than a principle? Plato would say, yes, but only if enough individuals choose to reorder their own souls. Justice is not a program, it is a practice. It is the quiet daily work of becoming aligned with what is good, true, and beautiful. And here's the warning we cannot ignore. If we fail to do this work, others will define justice for us, and they will do so in ways that serve their interests. They will call injustice order. They will call exploitation freedom. They will praise lies as patriotism and punish truth as treason. And we, if we are still in chains, will cheer them on. But if we wake up, if we dare to look at the light, we will see the world for what it is. More importantly, we will begin to see what it could be. Plato did not write to depress us. He wrote to awaken us, to show us that while the truth may be painful, it is also liberating. That while justice requires sacrifice, it also offers the only kind of peace that lasts, the peace of a soul rightly ordered and a city guided by wisdom, not will. In closing, Plato's warning still echoes today. The greatest injustice is not merely in the actions of rulers, but in the surrender of the people. When we give up the pursuit of truth, when we prefer entertainment to understanding, when we elect leaders who flatter rather than challenge us, we do not just fail to build a just society, we betray our own souls. So what can you do? You can begin with one question. What part of your soul is ruling you right now? Is it reason guiding you toward truth? Or is it something else, something easier, something louder, something more comfortable? Because until that question is answered, justice will remain a word, not a reality. And Plato's brutal truth will remain, as always, the warning we refuse to hear until it's too late.